first, let's get into some really, I guess, sad news.
No introduction is needed, but I'd like to introduce you to Reverend Jesse Jackson.
The Reverend Jesse Jackson was a civil rights leader and icon for decades. He was a major contributor to the civil rights movement and helped it accomplish many of its goals. Jackson even ran for president in 1984 and 1988.
The only time that we win is when we come together.
He was with Martin Luther King Jr. when King was assassinated at a Memphis hotel in 1968. He helped carry King's mission forward.
I really can't think of any single individual who's had more influence after Dr. King's tenure here than Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Until Barack Obama's election in 2008, Jackson was the most successful black candidate for U.S. president.
He really did help bring the awareness of the black political struggle forward. And I don't think that we can underestimate the impact of him, just the act of running. He wasn't fully successful, but I don't know if that mattered, right? That he showed that there's a need for it, that he really did lay the groundwork for Barack Obama to be a viable candidate.
Jackson attended President Barack Obama's election celebration in 2008 and was clearly moved. Jackson was also influential in international diplomacy. Jackson received the Medal of Freedom in 2000, the highest U.S. civilian honor.
It's hard to imagine how we could have come as far as we have without the creative power, the keen intellect, the loving heart, and the relentless passion of Jesse Louis Jackson.
Wherever you went, where people needed a lift, Jesse Jackson was there to give it to them. And that's his greatest contribution that I can think of.
In recent years, he attended rallies for Black Americans killed by police. He even attended some of their funerals. Jackson also joined Ahmaud Arbery's parents in court for the trial of the 3 white men charged with murdering their son.
Dr. King would be so proud of you today.
Yes.
Here you stand in the cold, multiracial, multicultural, employed, unemployed, because justice transcends race.
It's so hard to say he made it possible for this person and this person and this person, because in a real way he's made it possible for so many of us.
Yes, that was the man himself, Jesse Jackson, one of the most consequential civil rights leaders and political figures of the last, 60, 70 years, died on February the 17th at the age of 84. The man was an orator. He was an organizer. He was a moral force in American politics for more than 60 years, really. He devoted his life to the pursuit of racial justice, economic equality, and democratic inclusion. This man, what's crazy is that so much has happened in the last 70, 80 years. Our world has just changed so rapidly. I always wonder what it has to be for people like Jesse Jackson and other people from the civil rights era, and just people who are of a certain age to have lived through all these changes. Jesse Jackson was born in Greenville, South Carolina during Jim Crow, the height of Jim Crow. This dude wasn't You know, he wasn't speculating about Jim Crow. He lived it. You know, he didn't have indoor plumbing as a young child. You know, that's how poor he was, and that's really how, you know, the era he came up in was. You know, we talked about Oprah not too long ago, how she grew up in Mississippi in the 50s without indoor plumbing. These people saw life change so much in their lifetimes. And, you know, it's just incredible. I remember one of the most indelible images of Jesse Jackson that I have in my mind is watching him in Grant Park. I believe it was Grant Park in Chicago when Barack Obama was elected president. And and he's got his hand up to his mouth, his finger up to his mouth, and he's sobbing. He's sobbing after Barack Obama had achieved the presidency. And sometimes it just pays to just slow down and just remember what the world used to be like for a lot of these people, including, you know, Jesse Jackson. He rose to prominence during the civil rights movement as an associate of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was his mentee. He was literally one of the last links in the chain that we have to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He worked with the Southern Christian Leadership Council. He became one of the movement's most compelling young voices before becoming a leader in his own right post Dr. King's assassination. He was there on the balcony with Dr. King when he was shot. You know, again, the man was a living testament to history. He had lived through all of this, through Jim Crow, through abject Southern poverty, through, you know, being with Dr. King, watching him be assassinated. You know, after this, he founds Operation Push, which was an acronym. PUSH was an acronym for People United to Save Humanity. He later merged it with the National Rainbow Coalition to form the Rainbow Push Coalition. Through this organization, he fought for voting rights, affirmative action, labor organizing, economic justice, while forging the multiracial, multi-faith political alliances that reshaped what was considered progressive politics in this country. He would break historic grounds, becoming the first black candidate to mount a really nationally competitive campaign for the White House in 1984 and 1988. His 1988 run, which won multiple states and got millions of votes, permanently expanded the Democratic Party's coalition. I kind of remember, maybe I was too young to remember fully, but I remember Jesse Jackson being a thing politically. And he laid a lot of groundwork for people like Barack Obama. And I think it's important. I actually clipped his 1984 DNC speech. I wanted to play a little bit of it for you guys, because when I'm critical of the Democratic Party, which is pretty much every week on this show, a big part of the reason is because this, to me, is what Democratic politicians are supposed to sound like. People who, this is what the Democratic Party was supposed to be, reach for, which was Jesse Jackson and Richard Gordon Hatcher's Democratic Party, not the Clinton, Obama, Wall Street, military industrial complex, prison industrial complex, you know, fascist realm of the Democratic Party that we have now.
We dropped the bomb on Japan and felt guilty. But in 1984, other folks also got bombs. This time, if we drop the bomb, 6 minutes later, we too will be destroyed. It's not about dropping the bomb on somebody. It's about dropping a bomb on everybody. We must choose to develop minds over guided missiles and think it out and not fight it out. It's time for a change. diplomacy must be characterized by mutual respect, not by gunboat diplomacy, big stick diplomacy, and threats. Our nation at its best feeds the hungry. Our nation at its worst, will mine the harbors of Nicaragua. At its worst, will try to overthrow that government. At its worst, will cut aid to American education and increase aid to El Salvador. At its worst, our nation will have partnership with South Africa. That's a moral disgrace. It's a moral disgrace. It's a moral disgrace. Africa. We cannot just focus on apartheid in Southern Africa. We must fight for trade with Africa and not just aid to Africa. We cannot stand idly by and say we will not relate to Nicaragua unless they have elections there and then embrace military regime in Africa, overthrowing democratic governments in Nigeria and Liberia and Ghana. We must fight for democracy all around the world and play the game by one set of rules. Peace in this world. Our present formula for peace in the Middle East is inadequate. It will not work. There are 22 nations in the Middle East. Our nation must be able to talk and act and influence all of them. We must build upon Camp David and measure human rights by one yardstick. In that region, we have too many interests and too few friends. There's a way out: jobs, put America back to work. When I was a child growing up in Greenville, South Carolina, Reverend Sample used to preach ever so often a sermon relating to Jesus, and he said, "If I be lifted up, I'll draw all men unto me." I didn't quite understand what he meant as a child growing up, but I understand a little better now. If you raise up truth, it's magnetic. It has a way of drawing people. With all this confusion and this conviction and bright lights and parties and big fun, we must raise up the simple proposition. If we lift up a program to feed the hungry, they'll come running. If we lift up a program to study war no more, our youth will come running. If we lift up a program to put America back to work as an alternative to welfare and despair, they will come working. If we cut that military budget without cutting our defense and use that money to rebuild bridges and put steel workers back to work, and use that money and provide jobs for our cities, and use that money to build schools and pay teachers and educate our children and build hospitals and train doctors and train nurses, the whole nation will come running to us.
Wow, that is incredible right there. I mean, listen to him. An anti-war Democrat. Now the Democratic Party, tries to out-saber rattle the Republican Party. And so, listening to Jesse Jackson's 1984 speech, I'm just saddened by how antiquated it sounds. That now the Democratic Party are a corporate military-industrial complex party. That Jesse Jackson wouldn't even win one state. He wouldn't I just couldn't see it. Like Barack Obama from 2008, when he was talking about we need to talk to Venezuela, talk to Cuba, talk to North Korea, we should have diplomacy with everybody. He wouldn't win one state today. MSNBC would be like, oh my God, Barack, this super liberal loon They treat him like they treat like AOC and Ilhan Omar. That's who he be. He basically be Ilhan Omar today. And the same with Reverend Jesse Jackson. Just goes to show you how far to the right that the corporate Democratic Party has gotten in being a pro-war, being a pro-corporate party. Again, the effects of the Clintons, you know. And, you know, there's no denying who won the battle for the soul of the Democratic Party. Between Jesse Jackson and Bernie Sanders, people forget Bernie Sanders was a Jesse Jackson supporter. He was the first senator to support Jesse Jackson's run for president. The people who cared about the poor, the working class, organized labor, the people who wanted to have diplomacy with, you know, our supposed ally, our supposed enemies, you know, versus people who wanted to corporatize the Democratic Party and push identity politics as a distraction from class politics. You know, they won. You know, and unfortunate now we have two right-wing parties because people like Jesse Jackson were not allowed to have a real effect, and Richard Gordon Hatcher as well. You know, who was his campaign manager, Bernie Sanders, that whole coalition of politics is dead now. And so now you have to choose between the red fascist and the blue fascist. The red fascist is just crazier. And while the blue fascist is just sort of nicer and kinder and gentler while they push you towards technocracy. You know, it's really unfortunate. I mean, you look at beyond electoral politics, Jesse Jackson, you know, he engaged in high-profile diplomatic efforts to release political prisoners and hostages in countries like Syria and Cuba. He was friends with Fidel Castro, just like Malcolm X. Again, you would not see that in the modern Democratic Party today. You would not see anybody who just wasn't a hardcore red baiting, if you're a communist, I'm going to kill you and destroy your family type, you know, type liberal, you know. And it's one of the reasons why they worked so hard to keep Zoran Mamdani from winning in New York. He just beat the odds. You know, he broke the machine. He broke the system. He was just young and charismatic enough to break the hold that the corporatists have over the Democratic Party, which is an encouraging thing. Which is a very encouraging thing. I can't help but think that somebody like Zoran Mamdani would have been a Jesse Jackson supporter in 1988, 1984. You know, his 1988 campaign was endorsed by the Democratic Socialists of America. That's why I say that. You know, DSA, the same party that Zoran Mamdani comes out of in New York, endorsed Jesse Jackson in 1988. He spoke at Hugo Chavez's funeral in Venezuela. Again, you would not see that from a major American political figure today. And it's important to understand that even in Jesse Jackson's time in the 80s, he probably could have been more successful if you didn't have neoliberals like Chuck Schumer, who's still in Congress, ruining society today. Those types, the sort of mainstream corporate Democrats who blocked his Rainbow Coalition, they also blocked him in 2020 as well. So, I mean, remember, Jesse Jackson returned the favor to Bernie Sanders in 2020 and endorsed Bernie Sanders in 2020. And so, once again, Chuck Schumer, Barack Obama, the Clintons, all of these people worked to block the Jackson-Sanders sort of wing of the Democratic Party that has some class consciousness, some class analysis, some class loyalty to the working class. If you don't have those things, you can't call yourself on the left. You know, Michael Parenti explained it very well. Talking about gay marriage and abortion and transgender stuff is not what makes you the left. Class analysis, class consciousness, class loyalty to the working class and the poor. That's what makes you a leftist. You know, and at least Jesse Jackson in his time following in the footsteps of Dr. King, he had class loyalty to the working class. I'm not going to say that he was perfect. He was not. One of the more unfortunate things is that he looks better in hindsight because the people after him have been so terrible. But when I was growing up in the 90s and the 2000s, Jesse Jackson was viewed as, oh, that guy's, you know, he's safe. He's safe. He's not real. He's not a radical. He's safe. He's you know, he's the white man's civil rights leader. But in comparison to everybody who's come after him and how the Democratic Party has turned so sharply to the right over the last 30 years post the Clintons, he looks like Malcolm X now. He really does. You know, like I said, you wouldn't see any real political serious presidential candidates from the Democratic Party supporting the Cuban Revolution and Fidel Castro today, or Hugo Chavez. You would not see that today. And it's important to understand, you know, one of the great issues of our time currently in the world, what's going on in Palestine. It's important to say that when in Bayard Rustin, who was the CIA, who we found out now it was a CIA, you know, plant. I didn't know that until very recently, but yes, it is true. Bayard Rustin worked for the CIA. People like Bayard Rustin, A. Philip Randolph, Coretta Scott King, and a lot of others, they started BASIC in the 70s, which was Black Americans to Support Israel Committee. And a lot of black activists and celebrities signed on to the ad. You know, Martin Luther King's father also signed on. Jesse Jackson was one of the few of the civil rights community or, you know, prominent black people who refused to sign on to the BASIC committee. He always supported Palestinian rights. When he refused to sign that and to sign on for BASIC, they called him, just wait for it, anti-Semitic. Yes, because he did not support the genocide of the Palestinian people. They called him anti-Semitic. And lastly, before I get out of here, you know, I got to throw one more shot at the corporate sellout Democratic Party and what they become. It's important to understand that Jesse Jackson, in 2008, before most of us, well, pretty much all of us, he saw Barack Obama as the snake he was. He saw Barack Obama as a Zionist and a Wall Street establishment puppet who talked down to black people. And he got caught on the mic in 2008. Remember when all of black America got mad at Jesse and called him a hater because he said Barack keeps talking down to black people because he was telling us to stop feeding our kids fried chicken for breakfast. Look it up. He did say that. Stop feeding your kids fried chicken for breakfast. Those are Barack Obama's words. Popeyes. You might want to stop the Popeyes for breakfast. Jesse Jackson got caught on a hot mic talking about that and called Barack Obama out for being the snake that he was. And so much of black America, I would argue probably 75% of black America, canceled Reverend Jackson. And Reverend Jackson was never really a prominent figure after that. He did not survive the sort of post-Obama purge of black civil rights leaders who were directly from the King branch. He was from the King branch, Jesse Jackson. Obama was a guy who just came from Indonesia and Hawaii and convinced everybody that he was, you know, going to be some unifying figure. But Jesse Jackson, for all of his flaws, he was certainly better than what we replaced him with. I will say that. He was definitely better than what we replaced him with. And so I actually will be, I'm sad to see Reverend Jackson gone. We're going to pay more tribute to Reverend Jackson in the rest of the show, so you might want to stick around for that. When we get back, El Presidente, Donald John Trump. I'm only belling with the 34-time felon. He's not so secure about his chances to win the midterm elections. The Republicans are polling terribly, so you might want to pay attention to what Trump has planned for us all to ensure that he might be able to retain some grip on power. Please stay with us here on Straight Out of the Cannon with me, Scott Cannon, on the Regent's Choice, the People's Voice. Be right back.